Hello everyone. Welcome to the first episode of Vision CA Career Talks, an initiative by Team Vision CA wherein we interact with industry experts, leaders to get an insight as to what an industry expects, the nitty-gritty of a particular domain, and the roadmap ahead. Today we have with us our very own career mentor, CACS Pranav Modi. Being a finance professional with over a decade of experience ranging from FP&A, business finance, investment banking, and worked for various startups as well as Fortune 500 companies. He believes that growth and comfort never coexist, a mantra which he believed for over ages and which has fared well. We are extremely privileged to get an insight from a person with over a decade of experience. So, over to you, sir.
Yeah, thanks, Amay, for the kind introduction. And more importantly, it's a great initiative which you all guys have started with. It's something which a lot of, more importantly, the fresher CAs who have been recently passed out have come across these kind of gap very frequently. So there's a huge gap between what they actually learn while they are doing their CA articleship or CA theoretical things vis-a-vis what's there in practically, which is happening out there. So I also kept on receiving a lot of these kind of queries on LinkedIn and several other ways. But I guess this is the best medium wherein we can reach out to a larger masses. And the kind of initiative which you all guys have taken is really phenomenal. And it's kudos to the entire team for doing this for the entire CA fraternity.
Thanks a lot, sir. So, we will be covering a range of questions starting from your journey, your career advice, the dilemmas which you have faced, and the roadmap ahead.
Sure.
So, starting with it, like you have explored a lot of segments. So, what was your
Right.
journey from an audit taxation firm to an investment banking to an FP&A role?
Sure. So I basically did my articleship from a mid-sized CA firm. Primarily, I was into the auditing part of it, doing stat audit. So when I was doing that kind of work, so I was quite sure that this is not something which I can pursue myself from a long-term career horizon perspective. So what next for me, if not audit or not taxation? What are different avenues which open up for me? Then that's when I started interacting with a lot of people, mostly my seniors at college, a little bit reading about what was there on online. And I tried to figure out for myself that investment banking and equity research is something which would be my willingness to go about from a career horizon perspective. So while I was doing my CA, I came across one such institute who basically trains people from a analyst perspective, like on a day-to-day basis. If you are an analyst in investment banking or equity research, what are the different things which you need to do? So it was a full course, like a 2.5, 3 months time frame, which basically would be a full-time course. And I enrolled for that course, which was very helpful to me because it gave me a better perspective about how things are going around on a day-to-day basis in IB and equity research. And post that, I was basically started my journey with Nomura. I was working there as an investment banking analyst. So this is how basically it started out from basically completing my articleship, clearing my CA, and then moving on to my first role in investment banking for Nomura. So it was a great experience. I was there for close to 3 years time frame working as an IB analyst. I was working on consumer retail segment for the entire Asia Pacific region. But again, there was a second thought which came into my mind that this is not something which I feel, while it is great from a value addition perspective, there's a great learning which I got over there. But I couldn't see myself to continue this from a long-term time frame. More important being about the long strenuous working hours, which a lot of people do always complain about while working in investment banking. And that's when I decided that if not IB, then what next should be looking at? Because I was looking at more from a corporate role perspective, wherein it involves a lot of decision making assignments and helping management with different decision making things. And that's when I basically started evaluating job options for FP&A role. So a decade back, there was not much of a awareness about FP&A role, primarily for CAs. So more importantly, because it was a niche role, and most of the times it was dominated by MBAs from different colleges. And over the past decade, a lot of organizations have basically understood the importance of the FP&A role, and that's when things started rolling up for me for different companies. So I started off with Reliance Industries from FP&A. And then yeah, rest is history. I then worked with Vodafone, then with Direct Eye, and now I'm working with Clever Tap. Right.
That's an absolutely wonderful journey. So, what were the key learnings and takeaway from the day you become CA till today?
More importantly, like what I've realized that while I was doing my CA, it's not like many of you all guys have cleared in first attempt. I took multiple attempts in clearing my CA. So that's when I realized that I was being a little more overconfident for myself because I could clear my CS in first attempt, and I thought CA would also be in a position that I would clear in the first attempt. So that is where it was the biggest learning. Like this kind of failure actually helps you to understand what exactly you should be growing around yourself and where you should learn from your mistakes. That is where I basically realized that overconfidence was something which I lacked behind in myself. And whenever I kept on stepping into different roles, so I decided that whatever I do, I need to be on a continuous learning frame. So every day should be a new learning, not only from a finance perspective, but from anything. Like sometimes I interact with a lot of people with different departments, and every day has to be something that I should learn out of it and basically help in understanding what our organization goals are and try to help them in better decision making. So that is what my key things are. While from a success perspective, which I look for myself, that every day should be a great learning for yourself, and at the same point in time, while you rightly said initially that growth and it should coexist, like growth and comfort never coexist. So if you're getting too much comfortable in a particular role, so I personally feel that you should grow and try to explore more challenging roles. That is where I basically landed up doing different roles in different companies.
Absolutely great. They are corporate finance, business finance, FP&A. These are all
Right.
buzzwords in the finance industry, and they are often interchangeably used in the common parlance. So, what is the exact 10-line difference between these
Right.
profiles?
Just to give you some wider perspective, that what are the different things within the finance vertical which you have while you look around for outside world, and then what are more things which are more specific to CAs. That is what I basically classify. So when you look into a corporate role, you typically have a FP&A role, a treasury role, somebody working for corporate development or M&A teams, and there are investor relationship reporting roles. So and then you have the banking side of it, wherein you have the investment banking, you have the equity research, you have commercial banking, then you have different institutions which basically look after private equity and portfolio management. So and then there are big fours who basically cater to due diligence, transaction advisory, valuations, and so on. So these are the different fields within the corporate finance, wherein larger part of the CAs are also present right now. So typically you see CAs largely into private equity, investment banking, FP&A role, due diligence, commercial banking as well, wherein these are the fields which have been tapped by a lot of CAs, not only fresher but also experienced CAs. A lot of them are basically doing really great in each of these fields.
So, being an FP&A professional for the majority of your career span, so how would you describe a day in your life as an FP&A profile?
So yeah, honestly speaking, there is no such specific typical day in an FP&A role, apart from the routine things which an FP&A guy has to do, like a monthly MIS report preparing, budget versus actual comparison. These are the normal monthly activities or a quarterly annual activities which you can term, which are quite routine for an FP&A person. So if you are joining as an FP&A analyst or an initial CA fresher kind of a role, so most of the time you are basically working on accumulating all these data, preparing in a specific format which the management and the investors are looking for. So that would be a typical day from an FP&A perspective. But on a normal horizon perspective, FP&A is basically perceived as someone who basically converts the raw data into a more meaningful data. Basically, it tries to give more better understanding about how the business has actually been performing. So you basically connect the dots from what other people in the organization are doing, connect that with the financial numbers, which makes more sense from a business perspective. So when somebody from a senior management is giving having a review of a P&L of the particular month or a particular period. So this is where they look from an FP&A perspective, that which are the key things which they have highlighted, maybe some KPIs which are specifically for that particular industry, or maybe some kind of a headcount utilization and so on. So those kind of understandings are really important, and that can only come over a period of time once you have spent more time into the industry or into different roles within the company, which basically helps you to understand that how the business is basically performing, and how basically you can read those data and make some meaningful sense out of it. Because when the senior management also making decisions, so these kind of data become really important. So for example, if they are evaluating a performance of a specific product, then what are the different parameters which you look into? If they are looking at a performance of sales guys into different regions, so which sales guys are doing great, which are not doing great. So those kind of analysis basically you have to keep on doing while you're doing. So it's a lot of ad hoc analysis basically which you get to do, and you are kind of a center point of contact for the CEO or the CFO, who basically knows the business in and out from all perspectives. So normally accounts guy would basically help in preparing the P&L and the balance sheet of the company and ensure that all the compliances are in place. But when it comes to the analytics part of it, is the FP&A which basically falls into the picture to do all these aspects. And also, when I was referring to ad hoc analysis, so in my previous organizations, also got an opportunity to work on fundraising activity, due diligence activity. So you get a flavor of a lot of things while you are working on FP&A. You in a given day, you're working with the sales head of the company on some revenue forecasting activities. On some other day, you're working with the marketing teams to understand what is my ROI coming for each of the marketing campaigns. Sometimes you're sitting with the HR team to understand that what is my hiring plan for the entire year, how much are we planning to hire, what in which particular departments we are looking to ensure the additional capacity is coming. So it could be any of these things, considering what kind of role which we keep on doing on a daily basis.
That's wonderful.
Right.
So chartered accountants are often inquisitive in getting the finance-related profile. Let it be FP&A, corporate finance, investment banking, due diligence, equity research. So how come a fresher chartered accountant or an experienced probably can get into these fields?
So yeah, each field has a different thought process or different way to approach any particular job. So while I was when I was approaching investment banking role, so I basically gathered from myself that doing a basic financial modeling skills, PowerPoint presentation skills is something which a normal CA would be lacking to a larger extent, because that is not forming part of our curriculum. And that is where we also compete with the likes of the MBAs from a top tier institutions who have been doing this for a very long time, for a 2-year MBA which they are doing. So we, as a CA, we lack a lot when it comes to a good PPT skills, or making a full-blown financial model or Excel skill sets. And I realized this is where I need to brush up myself to a very in such a way that I can basically compete with these guys outside. So that would be an entry point for myself, which I decided if I want to move into an investment banking kind of a role. So and when it comes to something like an FP&A role, it normally depends upon what kind of experience you have gathered in past, not only from a CA with experience, but also if there is a fresher CA, then an articleship experience also matters a lot, that what kind of experience you have gathered over there, and basically what kind of inclination you have toward these kind of roles. So normally if I were, when I take interviews for people, even for a fresher kind of a role, I would normally expect from them that they have a great understanding about the industry for where they are coming from and which industry they are going to. For example, if I am interviewing a candidate for my company right now, so I would expect that he or she has a better understanding about how the industry is progressing, what are the key KPIs which needs to be mentioned, and it would be more of a scenario based questions, or which I would be asking about to get an understanding that how much that person has an understanding of the P&L and the balance sheet, and I'd relate that to particular company. So past experience from an FP&A perspective, and how do you perceive in this current industry, what are the different things which you know about? So those are the key things which we look into from an FP&A perspective.
So, amongst all the roles which you have experienced, let it be investment banking, the FP&A, the business finance, which role,
Right.
according to you, has the most interesting and more analytical skills as per your personal experience?
Yeah, so it's a very question that which I feel that all the roles have max analytical skill sets which are required, because each role requires a different types of skill sets. So when we talk about investment banking, from a skill sets, you need to understand how do you do a valuation of a company, what are the different ways to do valuation, DCF model, trading comparables, transaction comparables, and so on. And at the same point in time, you also need to understand how do you basically prepare the entire pitch book for the company. So every pitch book is different from a different deal perspective. So you are someday working on a buy side of a mandate, or you're someday working on an IP, or you're working on a sell side mandate for different region, for a different industry. So you need to have that knack in yourself, that how you basically need to go about preparing those kind of pitch books, so that when your seniors go into the meeting and present the material in front of them, they should be getting a holistic understanding about what exactly is going on in the industry, what that particular player is doing, and where the synergy lies for that particular person to do an M&A kind of a deal. So that is where the analytical skill sets lies when you're doing an investment banking kind of a role. When you do an due diligence kind of a role, it requires a different skill sets altogether. It's like a step up of a normal or statutory audit which you are doing, because at the when you are doing a stat audit, it's more from a statutory point of view which you are doing certain things. But when it comes to due diligence, you need to understand a lot about the business understanding, that how the business is basically functioning, what kind of different questions which you need to ask while doing your due diligence. So you need to get a detailed understanding about how the revenue is moving, why the costs are going up and down, and so on, and try to normalize the EBITDA, normalize the working capital, so that it basically helps the prospective buyer to understand that at what particular valuation we should be looking at for this particular company, whatever the company has given the projections, whether they are viable in the real world or not. So those kind of things you need to have a knack of understanding those kind of things when you're doing a due diligence kind of a role. So and when it comes to an FP&A role, again, so the skill sets change a little bit. You are just focusing on one company, but there are other departments which you need to focus on. You need to understand that which department functions in which way, what kind of expense they would be incurring. So for example, if there is one particular department who is asking for, let's say, an X amount of budget, so you need to basically understand and justify whether this budget which is being allocated to the particular department is justifiable or not. What are the different things which you will look into to assess whether these kind of allocation is viable or not. So and you might be also looking at different scenarios, like buy versus hiring kind of a thing on a when you are installing a capex, where you on a given day you might be evaluating a lot of business case studies to understand whether we should go about going into that particular business lines or not. So during that kind of thing, you should understand that what kind of commercials we should enter into, what are the different commercial clauses which should be entering into when we are signing a legal agreement. So when it comes to an FP&A or business finance role, so these are the different skill sets which are basically expected out of you. So getting more insights about the industry, more insights about the company, how they're performing, how the different departments are basically working. So that will basically help you to justify your role while you're working as an FP&A or business finance role.
All right. So, most of the finance profile requires a candidate with an experience. How can a freshly qualified chartered accountant land with core finance jobs?
Yeah, so like every job is quite different than each other. So I understand that there are a lot of people or organization expect that you have some 1 or 2 years basic experience while you get into another job. But there are few, I've come across a lot of these opportunities also, wherein they ask for fresher CAs or MBAs when it comes to a FP&A role or investment banking role. So there is always a benefit when a fresher is joining a company, because they are able to easily make them understand about the culture and the working style of the company, what are the clear expectations vis-a-vis somebody who's already worked for from 4 to 5 years and then coming into a different industry or a different working style. So clearly depends upon what kind of requirement the company has, whether they need they can mold somebody who is at a starting stage, or they need somebody from a leadership or a mid-level management kind of a role, depending upon the requirements which they have. But at the same point in time, I do understand there are requirements from a finance field perspective are really less when it compares to somebody with a more experienced kind of a role. But there are quite a few roles which I come across which require freshers as well, from an FP&A or due diligence or even investment banking roles. So I've interacted a lot with a lot of fresher CAs in past 1.5, 2 months time frame, and there are a lot of CAs who've been actually been able to land into these kind of roles when they were a fresher CA. So it's not something that it's not workable, but yeah, it's just that your CV should be made in such a way that it markets you in the best possible way when you are applying for these kind of roles. It should be more linked towards what their expectations are. So it should not happen that you have a general CV for investment banking or an FP&A or an audit or a taxation kind of a role. You need to change your thought process in each of these roles when you are applying for different roles. And also at the same point in time, you need to do a lot of what do we say, have a lot of connections in place, or network a lot with a lot of people, because you never know which particular referral or which particular connection can help you in getting an interview in one of his companies or any of his referrals which they have. So that also becomes really important, because luck factor is basically also plays a critical role when you want to land up in your first job which you basically are interested of. So these are the key things which basically are needed when you are basically landing into a first role typically. So yeah, so that is what I would infer from this, that there are fewer roles when it comes to a fresher CA, but yeah, there is always a lot of people who are able to land into these roles.
One more very common question which is usually asked is, do one require an
Right.
additional qualification or certification for entering into finance domain? And if yes, so which is the qualification one should sort for?
Yeah, so I would rather say more of certification courses always gives you a value addition when you are evaluating these kind of roles. Like something like a financial modeling course with a lot of good institutes are basically providing it online these days. So they do not only help you to understand what needs to be done on a day-to-day basis, they also help you to improvise on your Excel skill sets, which also becomes really important. So even if you don't want to get into an investment banking kind of a role, even if you want to get into some other roles as well, these courses are really helpful from a long-term horizon perspective, because it gives you a great understanding about how you basically prepare a projections of the company, what are the assumptions which goes into that, not only projecting a P&L, but projecting a balance sheet, a cash flow, how do you basically prepare a DCF model, what are the key things which go into preparing a DCF model, and so on. So this knowledge is really helpful, and I advise a lot of people to take some of these kind of courses, which helps to understand a lot from an analytical standpoint as well. And apart from that, any degree is something which is very subjective, honestly speaking, because if you are inclined towards, let's say, something like a portfolio management, then CFA would make a lot of sense to continue working. While working, you pursue CFA kind of a course. But if you're looking for something, let's say, kind of a investment banking or private equity or consultancy kind of a role, then MBA would make more sense over there rather than doing a CFA, because that is what would be more better in a position to link to those kind of roles. Again, for an FP&A perspective, there is nothing specific. There is no thumb rule that doing an additional degree would help you. Like for my example, I never did an MBA. I did whatever what I was doing with my CA experience. So again, there is no thumb rule kind of a thing that if you do MBA or CFA, you will be able to land up in this kind of role. But it is always advantageous to have something more flavored to your CFCB.
So being worked for a lot of listed companies, MNCs and startups, so how do you compare yourself working with a startup enterprise versus an established MNC on a criteria of learning and growth?
Right. So yeah. So during my initial career trajectory, I was working with a lot of bigger companies than what I'm doing right now. So what you learn out of that is that you get to know what are the different sophisticated processes which the companies are doing, what are the what are the great internal controls which the company ensures which they have in place. So work and at the same point in time, since the companies are there doing their businesses a very long time, it's more of a stabilized environment versus to a startup which is like a lot of unstabilized things are there in place. So you when you're working in big companies, you get to learn on a lot of on these aspects of what are the different softwares which the companies are using, the what are different processes which the companies are following. So vis-a-vis that, to a startup environment, there are a lot of things which do lack when it comes to different streamlined processes, internal controls in place. You have to work a lot about because there are a lot of things which are completely unstructured. So that is where your learnings come into the picture when you are gain your experience at a larger enterprises. So the expectations are that you basically try to gather those learnings into a startup kind of an environment and see how basically things are performing for you. So and when you are working in a startup, you get to learn a lot because it's more of a entrepreneurial job which you are doing rather than doing a typical FP&A or a business finance kind of a role. So in a larger organization, you are basically stuck to one specific profile. The reason being that the sheer volume itself is so much for that particular role that you basically don't get that much of a time to venture into something else. Either you take a complete transfer into a new role altogether within that company, or you stick to what you are basically doing. Because as I mentioned, the volume itself is so much that you don't get to know or understand what other people are doing. But at the same point in time, when you're working in a startup environment, you get to know a lot of things which other people in the other departments are doing. Because on a given day, as I mentioned earlier, you are interacting with people, let's say from marketing or from product or a sales guy or an HR person. So it basically gives you a 360-degree view of understanding that how a business is basically performed on a day-to-day basis, and what basically things are doing good for the startup and not doing great, and try to rectify those kind of things. Because a lot of processes are not in place, and this is where your talent or capability comes into picture, and try to improvise on that. So there are pros and cons for each of the whether you're working on a large MNC setup or something like a mid-size IT startup, which I'm currently working right now. So you get to learn in both the places, but yeah, the learnings are completely different in both the worlds.
One more question, which I feel that it must be most commonly asked to you, that does attempt really matters? Like whether a candidate with multiple attempts would get the same kind of opportunities like a first attempt or even a rank holders.
Yeah, so honestly speaking, even today, if I were to go outside in a job world to apply for a job, there are a lot of companies who would still ask me that in which attempt did you clear your CA. Even after a decade of experience, there are a lot of companies who do ask, because they have that specific criteria that we want somebody who's cleared in not more than 2 attempts, or we want somebody who has passed out in a specific year and so on. But there are a lot of these companies who basically try to understand that what you can bring on the table, what basically things which you have worked upon, what your experiences are, and they basically try to understand that what value addition you'll be in a position to do when you join the particular company. So yeah, there are two different things. Obviously, when you're starting a new job as a fresher, I wouldn't say no, but it matters a lot that whether you are a CA ranker or you're a first attempt CA, it does matter. Whereas same point in time with someone like me who has worked in a mid-sized CA firm and during an articleship time frame, and I've cleared in multiple attempts. So I've been able to land in jobs in investment banking and an FP&A role. So there is no like a thing that you won't be able to land into these kind of roles. At the end of the day, it depends a lot on your how you perceive each opportunities, what kind of preconceived notions you have on any specific job. Because most of the times when I talk to a lot of fresher CAs, they have this notion in mind that since I've not done articleship in Big Four, I have not cleared in first attempt, I'm so sure that I won't be able to land in jobs like that. So if you have a lower confidence, then obviously you will not be able to land into jobs like these. At the same point in time, you should be clear in your mind that which are the key areas which you should be focusing while applying for jobs. I do understand that a lot of people who want to enter into investment banking are not even able to get interview calls. So there should be a plan B also at the place, that if this is not working for me, then what should be my plan B? So it should not happen that you spend 6 months of your time after clearing CA just hunting around going into a investment banking role. Because I know a lot of people who have worked in 1 or 2 years, let's say in stat audit or some other field, and been able to move into due diligence or investment banking or an FP&A role. So it's not the end of the world that you are not able to do it something in initial year of your CA clearing. But obviously, if you are doing something which is relatable to that, you will be in a position to enter into your dream job. I came across one such person who has basically done auditing for startups, kind of a thing, and he has been able to land into a role in investment banking from a front end analyst perspective. I've known people who have worked in auditing. They have been landed in due diligence roles. So people have been able to change fields, but it depends on what kind of interest levels you have, and how you are basically able to learn yourself and make yourself understand that what are the key things which I need to learn to match the gap between what the investment banking analyst wants and what I have right now. So it's not to lose hope. I would still suggest that you keep on looking for what your interests are, because initially 1 or 2 years are very critical when you are switching jobs or moving into careers, because after 2 or 3 years time frame it becomes really difficult to move into a completely different field or a completely different role altogether, because you end up losing on that 2 3 years of your time, and you have to probably start fresh when you move into the next role.
So that covers up our part of shifting various roles. What about shifting
Right.
various industries? So considering like people often shift industry after a certain point of time in their career, probably to get an holistic experience, holistic exposure,
Right.
and then probably exploring better opportunities. So what's your stand on it? Whether it's shifting
Right.
industry is good or bad?
So, if you take my examples, I've taken all the boxes for what are the questions which you have asked. So, typically in my case, I was more inclined towards the role rather than shifting of industry, because I was more inclined towards what kind of profile is basically been given to me, what would be my responsibility roles and responsibilities from X role. So, while I moved from an investment banking Nomura, when I moved to Reliance, which was an oil and gas segment which I was working on. So initially, it took 4 to 5 months time for me to understand about the industry, about the different things which go about when you're doing an oil and gas industry. The same thing happened to me when I moved from Reliance to Vodafone. So from oil and gas to telecom, which I moved. So you take initially 4 to 5 months time frame to understand that what are the key things which are going on right now from a regulatory standpoint, from a business standpoint, and your how does it impact your work on a day-to-day basis. So once you are through with that initial 4 5 months time frame, that again that initial few months are really crucial, because you need to your expectations are there that you need to be up to mark with the others, because that is the only time which they can give you to come up and buckle up speed. Basically, if you are not able to match up, then you will be staying behind and you will not be able to perform the way it was expected from you. So when you move into the another role, obviously it comes with a separate expectations from the manager who is hiring you. So you need to basically keep yourself abreast. I used to do. I used to discuss a lot with the legal folks, the sales team, to understand how the business is actually moving from a legal standpoint, to understand what are the different regulatory things which are coming up in that particular industry, how you are basically able to cope up with what different new things which are coming up. So this is how basically you can cope up with moving on from different industries, and basically move about in that particular profile. I also get these questions a lot from a lot of fresher CAs, more importantly, that whether I should go in this particular sector or not. What I have heard from my friends, that this sector is not that great. I should not be joining a startup because job is uncertain, business is uncertain, and so on. So my stand on that is that no particular sector is not good or not bad, I would say, because it eventually depends upon whether your interest lies in that particular role, whether you can see yourself growing in that particular role, because every industry has its own specifics and you can grow. Because if you join a particular industry in a particular role, at the same point in time, you should not feel that for let's say for an IT industry or a manufacturing industry is not doing great, whether I will be able to grow, whether my salary will increase, and so on, whether I'll get promotions or not. So in every company, you see people are growing up the ladder, they are taking more responsibilities, are gaining more understanding about different dynamics about the role. So my suggestion to all those fresh CAs is that you should not just look from a short-term horizon perspective, and at the same point in time, no industry is bad, no industry is that will not stop your growth. Basically, it eventually depends on you, how you're basically growing, how you're basically learning in your role, and how you're trying to understand and how you're taking more and more responsibilities. So again, another misconception a lot of people have, that whether we should be joining a startup or not. Yeah, I do understand there are a lot of startups which may not do well from a business horizon perspective, but again, the kind of learning which you get in a startup, which may not be able to get in a big MNC's kind of a role. So joining a startup is definitely not to be considered that it could be a demeaning kind of a role, because you get to learn, the learning is very much progressively from the day one itself. The company is growing rapidly, at the same point in time you also grow rapidly along with the company. So yeah, this is some misconceptions which I come across a lot when I talk to a lot of fresh CAs. So I thought I'll just address it while we're discussing it over here.
That's actually more insightful, as this is a most common dilemma which everyone faces during this current time. So whether to join a startup, whether to join the established MNC, which fields to choose, which career options to pursue. So that's the most common thing which any fresher CA or any new age generation CA would probably ask for. So going
Right.
forward, looking at the future horizon, a role like FP&A, which is broadly budgeting and analysis based, will it be ever
Right.
taken by bots or artificial intelligence?
When it comes to an FP&A role, we always try to get more and more automation when we are working on, because at the end of the day, we want less amount of man hours to be gone in building a monitoring of the budget or monitoring of the forecast, rather than doing an analysis kind of a role. So yeah, if there is more of an AI kind of a thing which keeps on coming up for FP&A kind of role, it will be actually be beneficial to the role, honestly speaking, because at the end of the day, you will be able to spend more time when it comes to analysis of those numbers. AI can basically put in the numbers and throw you the results, but at the same point in time, it would be someone like an FP&A guy who would basically need to understand that what these numbers mean, what are the good things, what are the bad things which are going for different things. So while something like this would be really be for great help, because you need to look for more and more automation when it comes to an FP&A role from a process standpoint as well, because less of the manual intervention, more it is better, because there are less of errors which keeps on happening, and also you'll be able to focus more on the key areas and key deliverables rather than focusing more on preparing of these budgets. So you have a lot of these softwares as on date also, which basically cater to these kind of requirements of preparing a budgets and forecast. But what numbers should go inside that would be someone's human brain would be needed to make the machine understand that these are the numbers which would go into the system, and then you start monitoring it. So preparing the entire budget, what numbers should be taken, not to be taken, while you're doing the forecast, what numbers should be taken. So they can give you some prediction, or they can do their own analysis. But at the end of the day, it should be eventually boiled down to your analysis, that what is going good for the company or not.
Yes, agreed. So it would also result into what I feel like the junior level FP&A people would be more focused rather than slicing dicing to analysis of data, which will also improve and enhance their learning abilities and learning directions. So
Exactly.
according to
So
you,
even right now, there are a lot of people, like a lot of companies use all these Power BI tools and
Mhm.
softwares like Tableau and so on. So this basically helps you get more analytics, you can say, to understand about the different things which are going into the business. So you have softwares like Hyperion, which basically helps you to
Mhm.
basically help in collating the budget from different places. If you have like 20 different locations in the country or across the world, so software like Hyperion basically helps to a great extent, so that to have a budget in one particular place in that software. And Power BI kind of a thing usually helps a lot while preparing excellent charts and excellent graphs, basically to help you understand more in a depictive way rather than verbosing it. So something which is like in a chart format makes you understand more about the business performances than having it numbers all around the place. So those kind of things are really helpful evolving right now, and it's really helpful to do our job in a better way, because we can understand, we can focus more on analytical skills rather than just collating data and preparing and doing it all via our own self.
So, according to you, what are the skills which young professionals should focus upon, which will help them to shape their future career? Giving your closing remarks on this.
Yeah, so I what initially also I told, so I'll just say it again, that a lot of these fresh CAs come with this preconceived notions that we have now cleared the CA, we have cleared the biggest hurdle of our life. Now the jobs will just come to our feet the way we want. But that's not the case in the outside world, because you're competing a lot with a lot of different people, not only from CAs, but you're competing with MBAs of the world as well. So and the demand is huge, but the supply is less when it comes to good quality jobs. So once you are done with your CA, I understand that you have cleared the first hurdle, rather I would say, rather than saying that you have cleared the last hurdle. Then again, the learning keeps on continuing. You have to understand a lot about the importance of making a correct CV or a resume, because that is the best way which you will be in a position to market yourself to the outside world. So typically, when we also look at analyzing a particular CV, or even when the recruiters, HR recruiters are looking at a CV, they typically take around 8 to 10 seconds to screen the CV at one go. And there are a lot of softwares now in place which basically helps them to screen the CVs right now. So it becomes really important that you have the CV in a specific format and in a proper shape, because that's the first way you are marketing yourself to the outside world. Second thing which I advise a lot, that keep your LinkedIn profile also updated, because they are almost like 70-80% of the recruiters also do have a look at your LinkedIn profile, that what kind of post you are putting up on the LinkedIn, what are the comments which you are giving. So this also gives them a perspective that what kind of thought process the person has, and what inclination the person has into different things and going outside. And also this updating a LinkedIn profile also helps you from a networking standpoint, because you'll be able to network a lot with different peoples from the space, same industry or same vertical, or if there is a dream job which you are perceiving, you can basically connect to different people in that particular company, and probably one of them just might help you to give you a referral for that particular role in that particular company. So yeah, these are the key things which are important. And another thing which I would say, that if you're looking for, let's say, an investment banking kind of a role, or a due diligence, or a FP&A kind of a role, so try to get those financial modeling skills, which would be really be helpful from a long-term horizon perspective. It is like a short thing when it comes to, if you are evaluating investment banking role, because that is the key thing which is really expected out of you. Even during the interviews, first round of interviews, this is the major questions which are being asked, like walk me through a DCF model, how do you basically calculate the weighted average cost of capital, what is the EV by EBITDA ratio for this particular company, what are the different M&A deals which took place in the recent past. So those kind of things, questions are really important for you to know, and how to basically tackle those kind of things. When it comes to, let's say, a due diligence or an FP&A kind of role, try to get more understanding about the industry which you are applying for. Try to know that what are the key KPIs, key ratios which the companies look into when you are basically evaluating these kind of roles. Every industry would be coming out with different ratios requirement, because let's say an IT company would need a specific ratios, whereas a manufacturing would look into different ratios. So you need to understand for each of those companies that what are the key KPIs, and basically focus on those kind of areas, because when you are getting interviewed, there are chances are high that they would be asking questions a lot around these kind of things. So brushing up on the ratios which you have studied in your CA curriculum, at the same point in time learning new ratios and new things about that particular industry for their next roles. That is what I would basically suggest a lot of guys.
All right. So this sums up our list of all questions, and thank you very much for
Right.
your time which you spent to help the CA community to understand more often this, how to get into finance domain, more nitty-gritties of the finance. And thanks a lot. And we are dropping your LinkedIn IDs, our LinkedIn IDs. So if you have any question, you can just drop a comment in this video below, or else you can probably reach out to us via LinkedIn. Thank you.
Thanks, wonderful platform which you gave to me to basically address to a lot of these questions, because these are quite common questions, honestly speaking, which I come across. I've talked to around more than 150 plus CAs, fresh CAs in past 2 months, and these are the FAQs which are frequently asked to me. And with your basically these kind of discussions, we can cater to a lot of these questions at one go, and it's really helpful that this kind of initiative goes a long way. So thanks again for your time as well.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
the efforts.
Thank you.